Welcome to them Bahamians. Today's show is about a business plan for the Bahamas. My guest today is Milford Lockhart. Milford is a chartered accountant, and also he's written several local articles for papers, and he is the author of Yes, We Can. Welcome, Milford.
Thank you, Beryl. How are you doing?
Good. It's a pleasure that you're able to spend some time with me. To begin, your book, Yes, You Can. I recall when the Prime Minister was here several months ago, he mentioned that he wants to make the Bahamas the best little nation island in the world. And your book, Yes, You Can, having read your book, it seems as if you have the plan to reaching his goal. Now, have you ever discussed your book with members of government in the Bahamas? And were they receptive to your book, or were they thought that you're ahead of your time?
All of the above. Yes, I have discussed it with the PLP top brass. In particular, I sat down with their planning committee and explained the ramification of this book in total. I spent considerable time on the second chapter, the second core chapter, which is mariculture, explaining that to the powers that be. And I can tell you today that if you were to talk to my dear cousin, Mrs. Cheryl Wilson, she will tell you that you don't need to convince her about the possibilities in mariculture, because she's swallowed it hook, line, and sinker.
Okay.
And I'm a little disappointed in the fact that we have done very little in this area.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned, we have a immense blessing by God in the ability to grow fish. To grow fish where they are naturally grown in salt water. And we are not taking advantage of it.
Okay, okay. So, before we get into the book, give my audience, an insight into who you are, what you have done. You seem to be a seasoned person in the business. So give us an idea of, what you have done.
Well, first of all, let me hasten to say that my mother was Eugenia Lockhart, a stalwart consular, and the woman I claim was the most responsible for the ladies of our country being able to vote. She was a suffragette of first class. I grew up under the table, so to speak, of the PLP making decisions, because my house was like a headquarters of the PLP. We had the tea parties in the 50s, in the early 50s, to raise funds to keep the party going. And we as children had to clean up after it. And one of the PLP personnel said that Shaggy was under the table. And perhaps I was, because before the mace was thrown out of the window, I was given the story to St. John's, that the mace will be thrown out the window, because I had overheard. And little children, 16, 16, cannot keep their tongue. So I was able to tell them. And sure enough, the mace was thrown out the window that day. And so I have grown up with the PLP, so to speak. I said on a talk show that chances are I met Mr. Penland in my kitchen, in my refrigerator. I met Mr. A.D. Hanna in my pot. I met Mr. Alfred Maycock, a family member of ours, probably doing the same thing. And I dare not be rude, because you will be told later by the belt. And so my association with that was very, very close. Apart from my profession as a chartered accountant, I sort of ruled amateur golf for about 20 years. If you wanted to win a tournament in Nassau or Freeport or in the Bahamas, you had to beat Milford.
Okay.
The chances are you're going to come second. I do not know how many tournaments I have won. Somewhere between 80 at least and maybe 110.
Okay.
I jokingly said that the Nassau Guardian had a headline stuck, Shaggy wins again. I learned at a late stage, rather late, I was 27 years old, before I realized that I had a gift for writing.
Okay.
And I didn't write a few, I wrote numerous columns, in particular on golf. I wrote a column called On the Fairway, and I would explain various aspects of the game. And how, and at one point I had to explain how you mentally hold yourself together on the golf course. I did it for weeks.
Okay. So then, apparently, during that time, there seemed to be more golf courses then than when I was growing up. Because when I was growing up, it was tennis. Everyone played tennis. But you know, during that time, it was golf.
Yeah, we played some golf. However, we had made a mistake in hindsight. We did not realize, or the powers that be did not realize how intricately intertwined the game of golf is with our #1 industry and hence our economy, tourism. I've worked out a formula, and it seems true to form, that if you want to attract 1,000 overnight visitors, you have to prepare yourself to have 20 golf courses or 2 golf courses for every 100,000 visitors. Now, I also could remember the UBP back in the early 60s and up to the 1967. When they did mid-office, the Stafford Sanson skillfully met that ratio. I don't know if he was aware of it or not, but indeed we had about 800,000 overnight visitors to our fair shore when he did mid-office. We started in 72 counting, and that number was 872,872. That's what we started counting at. So if you extrapolate going backward, it seems as though Stafford had attracted somewhere around 800 million. But we had something like 16 golf courses.
Okay.
And when the majority government came into being, I don't know if they understood this part of the process as being integral to our well-being. We're the only destination in the world closing golf courses, the only one. Everybody else are opening them hands over fist. For instance, Iceland. Iceland has 108 golf courses. Yes. I was pleasantly surprised to learn that in 1992 or three thereabouts, that Iceland had 32 golf courses. How did I know that? I was watching the British Senior Open, and this young man was not young man, he was over 50, was on the leaderboard. And they made the statement, if you think Iceland doesn't have golf courses, Iceland has 32. And so when I looked it up, true to form, it was. And 5-10 years later, they added to their numbers. It was 56. Now today they have 108.
Okay. Well, now in your book, you also talk about fishing, education, agriculture, and many other topics in your book. But let's zero in on things that you want to expand the economy in the Bahamas. How would the golf courses you feel would help to bring back the tourist industry in the Bahamas?
Very simple. I don't eat pork. So if you invite me to dinner, you cannot put every meat pork, because I'm not going to eat it. I'm not going to touch it. I haven't eaten it since 1963. So I'm not going to start now. You cannot invite the people into the Bahamas not offering them their #1 pastime. When you look at the outgoing surveys, gambling wasn't the #1 reason. Beauty wasn't the #1 reason. They came for sports. Which sport they came for? when you take out, it sure was in basketball. It sure was in American football. It couldn't have been baseball. So the only thing left is golf. When you look at Golf Magazine and Golf Digest, they will tell you that 48% of the travelers are golfers. And we seem to have missed the point. I don't know, do we study enough as a people? As a people. For instance, in the heyday of our tourism, back in the late 60s, 70s, and early 80s, no one seemed to correlate that when the straw market and the International Bazaar in Grand Bahama were crowded or overcrowded with women, that their counterpart, their husbands, were on the golf course. And so the golfers come to play, and they give the ladies the credit card. And the ladies like to shop.
Right, okay. Now, let me ask you, you said that, golf courses is the thing.
Is a key to tourism.
The key to tourism. And that your book explained a number of areas. Now, you mentioned also that government has not, used any of your methods of expanding tourism, fishing, etc. Do you think that the brain power that you would need in order to take your programs, or the programs that you have outlined here, to the next level, would you find them in the Bahamas? Or a lot of our Bahamian students come abroad and never return. Do you think that you need to begin to look outside of the Bahamas for investors, or to take your program to another level? Having read your book, I've noticed that this does not only service the Bahamas, it serves the Caribbean and the whole world. In your book, you mention about the Philippines and several other places where water is plentiful.
Central.
How do you think, or what plan from your book do you see that we are different from the Philippines and other islands that you mentioned in your book, where fishing will be the #1 industry in the Bahamas, surpassing tourism?
Yes.
And from your book and from reading all that you've said, it seems that it is possible. And since you're, yes, we can make that happen. What do you have to say to that?
When you look at the Bahamas and you study and understand what is happening, I was shown the most important feature of our ability to grow fish in an outer body situation, so to speak. I was laying under my bed and looking at the map of the Bahamas showing the Great Barrier Reef. And all of a sudden it felt like I was suspended a foot above my bed. And a voice was saying to me, look what I have done for the Bahamas. I have circled the Bahamas with the Antilles currents so that the Bahamas Barrier Reef is no more than a great big fish basin. And as I studied, I began to realize that if you were going to build a fish pond to grow fish in, you would need plenty of clean water. The Bahamas has that. You will need a method of cleansing the cages. This current acts like a sewer system to cut off the effluents of the fish. In other words, here's what I'm talking about. If you build the cages, naturally the fish would excrete. When tide ebbs out, it carries with it the effluents of those fish. It's caught up in the currents, moving at 6.2 miles per hour, and is taken out of the country, period. When tide flows back, It brings with it clean, fresh water. The Philippines in itself is one of the largest grower of fish. One of their problems is red tide. And if you think in hurricanes, the Philippines had 17 hurricanes 2 years ago.
Wow.
So we haven't had that in 25 years. So take that out of your mind. The risk is well worth the taking. It is my take, and I've said this on numerous occasions, that if you diagram what this thing is saying, and if you take it to the United Nations, they will have to listen. Why? The world demands for fish and fish product is $15 trillion per annum. The world supplies, catch and growth, is only 5 trillion a year. Every year, the catch in the sea is reduced by 2%. And the world organizations are saying that the fish on your plate come 2040 will be farm grown. So the Bahamas, therefore, you can conclude that every pound of fish the Bahamas can grow, it can sell.
And with the waters, we are more in line to be more conducive to farm growing fish in the water, not on land.
Yes, not on land, because we have a scarcity of land. We don't have a scarcity of water. We have 100,000 square miles of sea or country, but only 4,000 square miles of it is land.
Now, one of the all other countries that you mentioned was China. China, as we know, for many years, they have been in the fishing business.
Big time.
Okay. How do we compare the Bahamas waters with what's there with China being the largest fish?
China grows
industry?
more than anybody else. It catches more than anybody else. Its total production is almost twice as big as Japan, which is in second place. I have it in numbers. It's over 16 million short ton. A short ton is 2,000 pounds of fish that they grow and catch a year. Now, here's the advantage, and it's a huge advantage over China. China has about 1,400 linear miles of coast to grow fish in, but it's all exposed. It's on the east side of the country. The west side, on the western boundary is bounded by land. On the east side, where they grow the fish, is on the rough side. It's on the windward side. The winds come off the sea and hit the coastal area where they're growing the fish first. We are lucky. We are doubly lucky. Our archipelago stretches about 700 miles. But in the process, we have close to 1,400 protected lee-sided coasts. In other words, from the land, where the wind is coming over the land first, by the time the waters get rough, it's like a mile out to sea. And so you got miles and miles of calm waters where you could begin the process of growing fish. When you look at the back of Andros, I don't know how to describe it. It has to be the most valuable piece of real estate in the world. And the only thing on the back of Andros is red bay and 1 trillion mosquitoes. This is sad. Here is another reason why the United Nations would have to listen to us. Andros is home and the breeding ground to most of the fish in this hemisphere. This hemisphere owes the Bahamas a debt. And that is because it supplies them the fish, their natural fish. And so they have to listen because of the scarcity of the product and because we are so integral in keeping up the species in the area. So We just blessed.
Okay, so you mentioned tourism and you've mentioned fishing to begin with. How costly is either of these to implement, and what's the span of time in order to get it to market or to begin exporting fish, or the incoming of tourism, the visitors to the shores for golfing? If we were to say start building golf, how much does it cost to build a golf course
About
of 19 holes? I think is it.
to design the golf course that you would cost you somewhere between $10 and $12 million, maybe a little bit more. Let's look at golf. Golf is not a profit center. It's a loss leader. What happens is you're trying to attract them. And just like I said before, the golfer, the acronym golf, let's deal with that for a split second. Golf means the acronym G stands for gentleman, O stands for only, L stands for ladies, and the F is forbidden. So golf is born in segregation, and today is still the same. 74% of the golfers are male. Those males control everything from the White House. President Obama plays golf. And the only president going back to Eisenhower that I know that didn't play golf was Jimmy Carter. Everyone played. So they control everything from the Pink House to the White House. And they are the movers and shakers of their own economy. Now, what has been happening in our country is that we made a strategical mistake. We saw the people running to play golf. Yogi Berra had to say it. They don't go there anymore, too crowded. The golf courses were overcrowded. But instead of us adding to the number of golf courses, we added to the price of the golf, thinking that the golfer would play no matter what the cost. It's not like that. It's not inflation proof. And the golf world learned that the hard way about 25 years ago, when 1% of the people stopped playing golf because of the price increase.
Well, what about fishing? I mean, how costly will it be for us to start, putting beds out there in the waters? Is that a costly project?
Well, it cannot be. We are much better off than the Philippines financially. That's a given. If they are doing it, then it cannot be that costly. My estimation is that you are looking at a project somewhere between, say, $350,000 to put an acre in containment to about maybe $700,000.
Okay.
Okay, let's look at that. If you do that and you start to grow the grouper, yes, the Philippines grow our national grouper in captivity. Okay? And you start to grow fish that are desirable. And our fish are most desirable. The snappers, which the grouper is part of the family. And the yellowtails, and the red snapper, and the gray snapper. All delicacies, all desired fish. Those fish come to maturity or pan size in 9 months. So, there are so many ways to address this problem. You know that the world is acutely short of fish. So, if you're going to put fish under cultivation, you can get on the phone or you can get with someone who is prepared to make money off fishing or buying and selling fish. So, here's a project that worked in us getting away from, because I'm going to say the same thing about fish. When the Bahamas did away with bringing in poinsettias at Christmas time, here's what the good agriculture minister said, Mr. Pettipuch. He said, how do you pay your suppliers in Florida? He said, if we want $10,000 worth of plants, we have to send them 5,000. And when they send the balance, we have to pay them the other 5,000, a good old futures contract. So we can do the same thing. You know that you can make money if you have a constant supply of fish. So what you're doing is you're actually fixing the price of fish. Now, when you do that and you say you go into these futures contracts, all kind of financial derivatives arrive. And now you have people who have to go in there and say, look, I have to hedge my bet. Suppose a hurricane happened. Well, a hurricane is force majeure. So basically, you don't have to worry about that factor. You don't have to be, you cannot be held accountable because you don't know when a hurricane will strike.
So we're looking at, say, the UN to look into what you have here in your book, or we're looking at the brain power outside the Bahamas, Bahamian brain power that are outside the Bahamas, or investors. Do you think that investors would invest in the fishing industry in the Bahamas?
Well, let me run this scenario to you. It came to my purview that the Bahamas is so blessed. Once we realize that this is what was made for us, and there's no one who can tell me otherwise, you can say to an angel investor, Buffett comes to mind, Oprah Winfrey comes to mind, Bill Gates comes to mind, and you say to them, look, I need to borrow, let's throw this number out, $8.5 billion, because it's in the papers yesterday, to deal with my fisheries. But I'm not going to pay you a dime of interest. He's going to look at you and say, you're crazy. No, I'm going to give you an offer you can't refuse. And here's how it works. You're going to give me $8.5 billion. We're going to pay this in 7.5 years. We're going to pay you back the principal. Well, how you can get away with the no interest part? Here's the deal. We're going to send you 1 pound of fish for every dollar you loan me. And you, with all your brain power, could at least make $1 a pound. So the $8.5 billion that we paid you back, you now add another $8.5 billion to your kitty. So you got $17 billion from dollars now. And listen, if you're so nice to scratch my back, I will be prepared to continue to scratch your back. And in the next 10, 15 years, or however you want it, because we do need to market the fish, we will send you 2 billion pounds of fish, guaranteed, so that you can make 2 billion pounds going forward. And when you look at it 15 years, that's 30 billion, 8.5 billion from the first lot, you've got almost 40 billion on an investment that you've gotten back.
Return on your investment.
So that's the way you do it. Now, when I articulated this to a cousin of mine who is a stalwart consul of the leading party in the country, he said, there's nobody capable of thinking that way. Now, I don't want you ever to accuse me of thinking in the box, because I don't know anything but no box. Never was in one and don't know what it looked like. And I have an idea that because of financial indifference, that Reggie Jackson gave to me when he was playing baseball. That's 1987. And it hasn't hit the market yet. And one of the talk show hosts in our country said, you 20 years in front of your time. So my thing is that when you get even with me, I'm leaving. You're too close. So I'm gone. So that's what we are capable of doing. Back to tourism. We have the best weather, the most beautiful water you want to see anywhere. When I told people in my college that you can see the bottom of the ocean floor at 60, 70, 80 feet down, they couldn't believe me. And when we showed them it is miraculous how clear the waters are.
So how does tourism plays into this? Do you find that the Bahamas is moving away from our culture and not incorporating it into tourism? Here in New York City, it seems as if all the other countries are displaying their culture in all the forms of the senses, the food, the music, the visual, you name it. What is the Bahamas doing as far as using their culture? Because that seems to be the way other countries are using their culture to market who they are before the tourists get to their shores. What is the Bahamas doing?
Are we ashamed of our culture? Are we ashamed of our culture? So what's our problem? Why we can't embrace this culture? Jamaica does it beautifully.
Yes, they do.
All right. I think Trinidad does it beautifully. I've never been to Trinidad, but what I've heard. So, but why are we importing other people's culture when we have the most beautiful, the most enriching culture, Junkanoo, right there? USA Today claim is the most exciting. Why don't we stick with our own? I am perturbed. Why do we have so little respect for things Bahamian?
You know, even our music can compete with all the other music, and yet, do you know today, our music is not played here in the United States. It's not played here in New York City, I should say.
Let me tell you a story. When we had the games, IMF relays, relay teams came from all over the world. One of the youngsters from one of the countries, I don't remember which one, I don't know, from Africa, he said, man, that Junkanoo music, man, that Junkanoo music sounds so good. It makes me feel like I could fly. He just wrote you an advertisement that should go international. All right? Beryl, I remember my oldest son, 2 years, going on 3. He's born on July the 7th. Somewhere between his birthday and somewhere between Christmas, he's a mere 2 years, 3 months, saying to his dad, Dad, Junkanoo puzzle. What you talking about, boy? Dad, Junkanoo puzzle. Suppose we had the gumption to spend about $800,000. I can give you some ideas. Bring in a Junkanoo cut and puzzle machine. Put the Junkanoos to work. Put the Junkanoo DVD in that package. And every member coming to us to visit us for the games in 2017 gets 10 of them. When they open their package and they hear the boom, 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 and they start to rock and roll, shake their hips. This will be a water cooler moment all over the world. Why are we afraid to promote what we own, our own?
What is the Bahamas doing?
Sleeping.
They're not using their people.
They're sleeping.
You know, we have a lot of rake and scrape music bands in the Bahamas. Why aren't they exposing their music? That's our cultural
Why
music.
are we frowning on what we have?
Right.
It's unique.
It is.
When you hear the Bahamian music, the rake and scrape, the merengue,
you talk about the soar and the concertina.
You naturally start to rock with it.
And those instruments you don't see other people using. Them.
But some kind of how we don't think is worthy. I was the best geography student in the best geography school. I didn't learn one thing about the Bahamas, you know.
Yes.
No geography was taught me about the Bahamas.
Right.
And when you look at this book is telling you where the currents are. This book is telling you where we line up, just east of Cuba and southeast of Miami, Florida. But its position is showing you clearly. It's telling you that fishing can be a strong part. Our geography determines our economy. And so much geography in this, way more than I learned in school. One of the questions I like to pose to people in Nassau in particular, if I give you $100, what to take me to the Great Barrier Reef. Where are you going to take me? And they tell me behind Andros. I say, yeah, that's true. That's dead true. The bulk of our Great Barrier Reef are on the west side of Andros.
Yeah.
But you ever consider that you're standing right now? Most of the time I ask the question, we are within 300-400 feet of the barrier if you're looking at it.
Right off Hog Island, Paradise Island,
The harbor.
the harbor.
Wherever you see the aquamarine water, that aquamarine in the flag, that is our Great Barrier Reef.
Well, let me ask you, 2 years ago, we introduced in the Bahamas the value-added tax. When they were talking about the value-added tax, was it ever said that the returns will be made to do what?
No, it was clear to me that this was in the general pool of monies, and as most things are. The only thing that I know supposed to be designated for the purpose and tax is the tax on gasoline. That's supposed to keep the roads in shape. However, I will say I don't think that's what the purpose is. Mind you, they've been doing a fairly good job on repairing the roads because of our makeup being because of the land itself being calcium.
But do you think that's the best way for the Bahamas to be lumping all of their taxes, all of their income into a pool instead of designating, for instance, the the numbers games was introduced last year. Is that also going into the general pool?
That's a general pool. And I believe where you're trying to go is to education.
They're trying to.
Where you trying to go is to education.
Because here in New York City, for instance, we have the numbers game. And from what I'm reading, all of the proceeds go to, after expenses, go towards education. Do you think that probably, we copy America in a lot of ways. Do you think that's one of the areas that they might want to copy the United States by taking the gaming money and putting it into education?
New York has gone to $15, I think.
No, not yet.
Not yet. Are they about to?
And fast food, I think the fast food only.
But they're moving towards it. California's there.
A lot of conversation.
California's there. Washington State is there. The dishwashers in Toronto are paid $17.10 an hour.
And the cost of living in Toronto is cheaper.
Far cheaper than
the United States.
And way cheaper than the Bahamas.
Right, true.
Right?
Very true.
And I've been asking the question because I sleep with a teacher every night for the last 27 years or thereabouts. And I've been asking her this, and I've been asking whoever would listen, why in the world are we spending so little money on education? Do we understand the economics of education? How can we run a country if half and more of our brain power is staying abroad? How can our people be saying to our children, if you find a job, don't come back, boy? Who can help me fight? If you're going to tell your children, go over there and don't come back.
Right.
I think this is the richest country, pound for pound, on God's earth. Why are we frowning on what God gave us? Why are we not taking advantage of it? You know, when I realized how beautiful this country, our country was, even more, I've been watching hurricanes religiously from I can remember. Geography was always something I was intrigued with. Hurricanes I would watch. Every time you see the Bahamas get a storm down here in the Great Barrier Reef, down in the south, they draw a beeline to Nassau. Unfortunately, this has never happened in the 55, 60 years I've been watching, because the hurricane do not want to be on this barrier reef. Some reason or the other, it repels the hurricane to go either left, which is west, or right, which is east of the Bahamas and out of our country. Never has happened. But you will see it on TV. Oh boy, Nassau can get hit. I never worry when it's down there. It cannot happen.
Right.
Okay? So that's one of the protection God gave us. And I was saying this to say this. I remember a hurricane out in the Atlantic. It was a Cat 5. What this thing gonna do? And it was so far east of the Bahamas that it was of little impact. And as it climbed northward, it became a Category 4. What happened here? And the next day, it's a Category 3. The next day, it's a Category 2. And when it reached Bermuda, it was a Cat 1. And so I try to figure out what the devil is happening. So I don't like to go on one sample. Then I saw it happen again. And then I learned where the white sharks were. And so I realized that this warm current on the other side of the warm current, like a refrigerator, is the cold current. And so the problem, the sweetness that we have is that the white sharks, because of their makeup, do not want to deal with the warm water. So anytime you see a white shark in the Bahamas, he's sunbathing on the beach. And then I realized, and here's the expression I started to use, we are too blessed to be in this mess. Let's think our way out. Why are we afraid to think? Why are we afraid to take chances? Why are we basically saying to our brothers and sisters in the Bahamas that big business ain't for you? Okay? Why you want to call me a little person who's only capable of little business? This doesn't make sense. I've got the same brain power and the same ability to do the same miraculous things as the other people. Why are we waiting for Columbus to show up to show us how to develop our Great Barrier Reef? Our fishing. Why? They've already shown you how to develop the tourist sector. Copy them.
Right. And so the thing is that if we wait for, like you say, Columbus to come in, will the money be staying in the Bahamas?
Well,
most of it will be going out.
The bulk of the money goes to who owns it.
Right.
All right?
Yeah.
But what I'm saying to you is that, for one thing, if we were to go to the United Nations, well diagrammed, the United Nations will be forced to take us seriously. And what's wrong with borrowing $2.5 billion? Well, you're talking big money. Yes, we're talking big money. But one of the things we say is we can't compare ourselves to the United States. Why not? Believe it or not, the numbers are the same. The only difference between the numbers in the Bahamas and the numbers in the United States is 3 zeros. If you take the national debt of the United States and take off the last three zeros, you will be left with about $18-19 billion for the same 350,000 people that we have in the Bahamas. They're capable of doing that. I don't know what gives them the powers to do that. Their money is not threatened.
Right.
The Bahamas, in comparison then, with its 350,000 people, owes a meager $6 billion. We owe 1/3 of what they owe. So we, in our boldness, can say to them, look, the world at large need us because of our ability to grow fish.
Right.
And therefore, we say to you, one way, shape, form, or the other, we need this extra $2.5 billion to do 2 things. And Mr. Obama tried to do this, but it was stopped. We need $1.25 billion to put into creating the fish farms in the various family islands. And we need the $1.25 billion to put in the infrastructure to support this industry. Because as more people get there, we don't need clinics on the family island. We need small hospitals on the family island. We need roads on the family island. We would need docks on the family island. We would need airports, egress and ingress. And so it has to go with the whole 9 yards.
Right. Okay. In addition to the whole 9 yards, you know, a lot of the people on the family islands are coming to the Bahamas for work. How can we improve the industries, for instance, tourism? Do you think that golf courses on the family islands will help that industry? Do you think that tourists will want to go to the family islands for a vacation?
The most famous race, maybe in the world, is a bicycle race called the Tour de France. So we promote the Bahamas, golf the Bahamas, golf the whole Bahamas. In San Salvador, I had the opportunity to ride around San Salvador with the then mayor, who was passed, Mr. Clarence Carter. You might have known him. And when we got to Huey, he took me out on the ridge of property jutting out in the Atlantic. And my mind went to work. And I started to design a golf course right there. And he who had never held a golf club in his hand got excited. And he said to me, Shaggy, I could never dream what this property is supposed to be. I said, Mr. Carter, if you were to do this, it might cost you $15 million just to design those 3 holes there. But you would have to put a shop right in the entrance of these holes just to take care of the number of shots that they're going to take. You would have a waiting list to play this golf course 5 years long. And he began to say, when you riding along the property in this area, you'll be looking left, nothing but pure, crystal clear aquamarine water. On the right, same thing.
Now, you know, our culture is really lacking in the tourist industry. You know, in addition to, you know, our foods, our music, our literature, our arts, Bahamian art, etc., we are building quickly, fast. One of our dying culture or item in the food industry is crabbing. People on the family islands, they go crabbing. Has anyone thought about doing a crab farming for crabs?
I have not heard about it, but the event or the cultural side of it is not diet. That part of it is intact. Okay. But I hear what you're saying. But what you just did was thought out of the box. And that's the problem we have in the Bahamas. If you think out of the box, you put the fear of God in people. They don't want you thinking. They want you thinking about people's business. Why do I need to go down there? That's the third rung of information. Talking people's business. I hate to talk about myself. That's the second rung on my achievement. I love to talk about ideas. That's the first rung. And if we stay there, more often than not, we will get the answers. This brings me to mind with Unicom. Back when I was at the age of going to college, Unicom was sort of coming into vogue. And there were all kind of sharp-minded people involved. You had Sean McQueen, you had Frankie Wilson, you had my sister Francilia Bosfield, and a whole number of young people with bright ideas. Out of Unicom came the vanguard, which came one of the things that we should be pressing more often, local government throughout the islands, not in the family islands, throughout the islands. I believe the country will be managed much more tightly and better if everybody had total control of managing their constituency.
So you're telling me that the local government in the family islands are working?
They are not working because they're still being controlled by the central government.
Okay.
All right?
We're not supplying, or we're not growing in the Bahamas enough food products for the families. Let's talk about the restaurants and the hotels. Why are we shortchanging ourselves in that area where we have to import all of our food products?
And it's getting worse. We have less than 1,000 farmers in our family islands. We have less than 5,000 acres under cultivation. We have 240,000 acres of arable land. Therefore, we have less than 2.5% of our arable land under cultivation. That's astonishing. No, because we have sold farming incorrectly. We sold farming with the old hat on your head and a cutlass in your hand. We have downgraded that profession. We've looked down on it, frowned on it. We've acted accordingly. And over the years, when we took power, we had 16,000 farmers. We were growing our foods, growing our meats, and all of a sudden, this honorable profession is not worthy of our dirty hands.
So is there any movement towards?
BAMSI is a step in the right direction.
You said BAMSI?
BAMSI.
Okay.
It's something new that Dr. Godfrey, he put together, and it's to do with marine. The M in it is marine, I know that much. What he's saying is that we need to look at it more closely as far as the marine product is concerned, the average farm is concerned, and they're doing a fairly good job. And what they're doing is they're bringing some glory back to the profession.
Okay.
However, if we were going to develop, we're going to have to develop our farming. We need to be sustainable.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that government is lending support in that area?
Well, to BAMS's extent, yes. They're doing a fairly good job at that. Mm-hmm. And hopefully it be as successful as it has been in the first couple of years of its running.
Okay.
And I wish them all the best.
So that's farming. What about fishing? Are there any?
Well, that's the part that I'm a little concerned. They seem to have very little emphasis on the marine side of BAMSI. What he's saying is that we need to look at it more closely as far as the marine product is concerned, the average farm is concerned, and they're doing a fairly good job. And what they're doing is they're bringing some glory back to the profession.
Okay.
However, I don't know if they're moving swiftly enough, because I think they could incorporate it a little faster. However, if we were going to develop, we're going to have to develop our farming. We need to be sustainable.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that government is lending support in that area?
Well, to BAMS's extent, yes. They're doing a fairly good job at that. Mm-hmm. And hopefully it be as successful as it has been in the first couple of years of its running. Okay. And I wish them all the best.
So that's farming. What about fishing? Are there any?
Well, that's the part that I'm a little concerned. They seem to have very little emphasis on the marine side of BAMSI. And the marine is in there.
Yeah, because you talk about Mara culture.
Yeah.
Explain that. We were coming towards the end of the show. Can you explain Mara culture? Mara
culture is basically Mari. You mean marine. It's the sea. Maris, whatever it is the sea. And I thought it was a word. I was writing this thing for many, many years. So I'm thinking it's a word. All right. Until my good friend, Dr. Eugene Nuri, said to me that you realize this is not a word, which was about 3 years ago.
Now, he is the ambassador to the United States. How receptive was he to your book?
Gee, when I showed him the cover of the book, and I said, on that cover, nature's chain link fence. See that? He said, he jumped up. We should have a bipartisan committee just to study those 4 words. He is hook, line, and sinker behind this. Now, fortunately for the Bahamas, this book could be the only material written for small island development states.
Okay.
So it stands to reason that yes, we can, gonna buck up to yes, you can in a year or so, and I don't know how they're gonna keep this book from flying. Yes.
Now, what's the next step for this, for you and this book?
The next step is for me to include what I call the end run.
The end run, okay.
And the end run will put on paper, I believe it's going to be very eloquently too, what each area of this book will look like in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. If we follow this program, in 7 years' time, the amount of monies that we could get from mariculture, agriculture, tourism, the amount of rent from the Barrier Reef will be more than enough to pay our national debt. Do away with the gasoline tax, do away with the duties, do away with VAT, and the prices in the Bahamas will come tumbling down.
Okay. Milford, you're really passionate about your work. You're passionate about what you have said in this book. And I do hope that very shortly, someone is going to come knocking, let's move this to the next level.
I sure hope so. I think it's high time that the Bahamas take its rightful place among the table of opportunity.